Well, greetings everyone, and welcome once again to another Thursday night of the Sports Crib. Excuse me, let me plug my headphones in here. Hopefully, you can hear me much better now. Okay. See, I brought out my Pittsburgh hat tonight to celebrate my Steelers win over the Colts. If you want to hear me talk a little more trash about that, join us tomorrow night on And the Winners Are with me and Mr. Mike Valverde. Also, I was hoping to get a doubleheader this week, but I guess I'll have to settle for 50-50. Uh, the Buckeyes going down to the hands of the Wolverines, but
Woo!
my
Oof,
Steelers coming back.
oof. That
Uh,
was that was rough, James. That was a rough watch. I I don't have a dog in that particular fight, so I was able to just sort of watch it as a dispassionate analyst. And I will say this much: it is clear to me that the defensive line talent that you normally see at Ohio State, where oh look, there's Chase Young, oh there's a Bosa brother or another Bosa brother, right? Uh, None of those guys are on the team right now. JTT, Mr. T Malalo, is probably the most talented of the defensive line players they have, and he's a hybrid, whatever term you want to use. But he's not a pure, full-fledged defensive end. He's sort of a, Terrell Suggs-ish kind of player. But the
well,
rest,
we talked about the defense at the beginning of the season when
yes,
we were talking about they were rebuilding and but after going through that as the season progressed and
uh-huh.
uh, we kind of saw like more and more you could see the deficiencies kind of piling up there, but you weren't playing a team of a Michigan caliber.
Right.
I know, so I think there was some exposure in the Penn State game, but you know, uh, uh, hey, congratulations to Michigan.
Yes.
I'm still a little salty about USC and vaulting over there, but I think there's a lot of discussions that we can have about some one-loss teams because after this week we'll be going through some conference finals and there'll be a lot of one-loss teams that maybe should be in the mix.
Yep.
So
Yep. Yeah. Well,
and
there's still some. Yeah,
well,
there's some chance for movement. Yeah.
we still have a couple games. I mean, we don't really look at them that way, but what do you have? USC is playing
Utah
is
again, so they get the rematch now. So here's the opportunity for Ohio State. Obviously, if USC loses, Ohio State is right in position to slide back in there. But they fell to fifth, and I think it's to be expected. It's not if that had been like USC's loss, right? It's on the last play of the game on a 2-point conversion. That's how USC lost to Utah. I don't think you would see a big slide down. I think they would have probably moved down, 1 or 2 spots at most. They would still be at either 3 or 4, and TCU would be the only would have moved above them probably. But if you lose like that, I mean, late in the game, from the third quarter, mid third quarter on,
yeah. I
Michigan
mean,
did whatever they wanted.
Michigan just to put it in and I know it's not after
Not
dark
after
yet,
dark yet, but let me put it this
but
way:
they
it looked,
but they stomped the mud hole uh,
yeah,
from the middle of the
yeah,
third quarter on.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and then you also have let's see, you mentioned it's not TCU. Who's TCU playing this week? Somebody's playing Tulane.
Yeah, Tulane is not up there yet. Tulane is down around what 11 or something, so you don't have to worry about Tulane.
No,
Uh,
no, no. I'm just talking in terms of matchups this week, where you had where you
well,
still have a
Tulane's
possibility.
right, but Tulane's playing in their own conference championship, so it doesn't affect a Power Five team. It would take a real bloodbath for Tulane to even threaten
Yeah,
any of the teams we're talking about.
and
So the
I'm trying. Who's TCU's opponent
TCU
this week?
is going to be in their conference championship playing, I think, Kansas State. So yeah, I'm pretty sure you know it is. So, and once again, that's not a game that it's impossible to lose. They could possibly lose that game. Kansas State plays everybody tough. Nobody enjoys playing Kansas State, but they should win that game.
Yeah, they should.
They're the more talented team.
And USC should win this game. You know,
they should have won the first one, quite frankly.
Right.
But Utah is one of those teams that nobody enjoys playing too. Like Utah is no fun to play. Utah is essentially a Big Ten school anyway. Like that's a good practice for USC on their way because they're basically just Wisconsin with way more guys from like the Polynesian, way more Pacific Islanders. That's what it is. This is Wisconsin. That's what Utah is. Wisconsin with way more guys from the Pacific Islands. That's essentially what they are. They play like Wisconsin in a lot of ways. Better quarterback, though. Wisconsin struggles to find quarterbacks, but they have a better quarterback than Wisconsin. But they play very similarly. It's very physical, emphasis on defense and the running game, and they have a very good offensive line. They don't have any really truly dynamic receivers. Once again, like Wisconsin. But they have good tight ends, once again, like Wisconsin. They really are the Wisconsin of the Pac-12. I mean, they really are. If you just watch their offenses side by side, it's remarkably similar, except for better quarterback. But, yeah, they just need to – once again, their defensive line is the issue. So we just talked about Ohio State. They have one, just like Ohio State, one really good, Jay Tilapau. Is that it? I can't remember how it's pronounced again, but I'll have to look at it. But he's a legit like top 50 pro prospect, and the rest of their defensive
Wait a minute,
line
hold on. Bulletin. Did we just have a name that Bill killed?
I can pronounce it if I look at it. I have to look at it again.
I was just getting ready to say.
I just have to picture it. If I were looking at it, it'd be no problem because people act like these names are difficult. They're always phonetically pronounced. You just have to look at them and then slow down and not panic, right? The problem that most people have with Polynesian names, they panic. They say, oh, that's a lot of letters. Oh, I don't like, they get scared, right? If you just look at them and realize, sound it out, it's just phonetics, boom, 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 right? They're not really that hard. But he's their one really good down lineman. And the rest of the defensive linemen are, they're good college players and guys that are fringe pro prospects, but they've got one really good pro prospect in their front seven. And they've got a couple of guys who are decent in the secondary, but they've got real problems on their defense too, as we talked about. They really are a lot like Ohio State, actually. In fact, in the way those two teams are built, they're very similar. Ohio State, due to injury, because USC had their two best receivers hurt much of the season. Addison, who probably would have been a back-to-back Biletnikoff Award winner if he'd been healthy this year, but wasn't. And then Mario Williams, the other big-time recruit that they had transfer in, struggled with injury. So we saw Brendan Rice, right, the son of Jerry Rice, got more run because of it. So they were forced, and I think it's sort of a good thing, to play some of their depth guys. And now when they get back Addison and they get back Mario Williams, now they've developed some of the secondary and tertiary receivers. So their offense, if anything, has gotten better through being forced to play other guys.
It's amazing, and we probably will get a chance to talk about it next week or after the bowl games. But how now you're seeing so many sons, Marvin Harris's son, Joey Porter's son,
Ray Rice's son,
hey,
Brian Cox, his son Brenton Cox. A game-winning catch was made by Mason Taylor, the son of Jason Taylor. Yes.
Yeah. See, there's a lot of these young kids, that are now the sons of guys that I guess a couple of them will be going in the Hall of Fame soon. And
some are in.
Some are already in.
Yep.
It's amazing to watch the growth of the sons within the sport.
Yep.
But now I've been one to criticize King James for quite quite a few years.
Sure.
But it's mostly because of, like I said, that hometown rivalry, Youngstown, Akron, that Northeast Ohio thing, you
Right.
know. So, and then he played at the school that he played in, Warren. I mean, that's only 12 miles from Youngstown. So, so he's been the scourge in my, in my little area of the woods there for quite some time.
Right.
But LeBron has spoke out on other social
Yep.
media and topics. Uh, as a matter of fact, one of the famous retorts to one of his
Dr. Laura Ingraham.
remarks, just shut up and dribble, right?
Right.
Famous Fox News quote there.
Yep.
But this last press conference, I mean, if I wish Mr. Scott was here, because to me this was definitely a drop the mic moment when he asked the mainstream sports media, why do I not have any questions concerning Jerry Jones? Now, if people remember, LeBron used to be a Dallas Cowboy fan.
Until
Which,
a couple years ago, yeah.
right, which was also another reason for me to shun it, so, I mean, he might as well have been a Cleveland Clowns fan, as far, but anyway, it seems,
And he is now. That is actually his main NFL team now.
but the thing of it is, is like, okay, Jerry Jones says, well, basically, I was just a part of the crowd. I wanted to see what was happening.
Right. I was a curious kid, is what he said. Right. I'm sure he was. Sure, he was curious.
But you see, I also remember as a kid watching all of the things that led up to this on a black and white TV.
Yep.
That only had 3 channels. Okay, so it wasn't something that you could avoid.
Yep.
There was days leading up to this. There was a whole introduction. As a matter of fact, there were throwback pictures of fathers standing in front of
literally standing in the schoolhouse doors, saying segregation now. Well, actually, it was George Wallace who said segregation now.
Right. But I was going to get to George Wallace, who eventually got shot in the great state of Ohio. While
oh boy, yes.
But Bill, what did you think about LeBron's remarks? And do you think, as he said, the media, and I'm going to be blunt on this one, the media gave him a white man's pass?
Well, here's what happened. And I mean, people did question Jerry Jones about it. It's not like he's been given, I wouldn't say he's given a pass. I would say that he's been given a certain amount of grace, right? Yeah, I mean, he is a 10th grader, I think, at the time, if my math is correct. So we're talking about someone who's probably 15 years old. So I'm not going to excoriate him for what he did or didn't do. What I will say is, when he says curious, it's an interesting term to use. This was not an unimportant event. Now, this is not the most famous. He's not at Central High. He's at North High. Central High is the more famous of the two. That's the one where you see the 82nd Airborne. That's the one where, that's the more iconic of the two. But this is, less than 10 miles away. I mean, it's not like they don't know. So it's not like this is a surprise. Everyone's been hearing about this. This is not something that's like, oh, what's going on? No,
there wasn't a beating of drums. They didn't have to wait for it, to travel through, I mean, like I said, there were only 3 channels on TV.
Right. And they've known about it. And it's the biggest news in every paper. This is a time when people still read newspapers every day. It's the biggest news in, no offense to Little Rock, Arkansas, but there's no bigger news story in Little Rock, Arkansas at that time in 1957. I promise you that. That's not being knocked off the headlines by, I don't know, whoever, somebody's prize-winning heifer at the 4-H competition or whatever. Like the biggest news for months in Little Rock has been the day of the schools being desegregated. That's the biggest story and has been the biggest story. So he's probably curious to see what's going to happen, I guess. Like, will they be stabbed? Will they be shot? Will they be hung? Will they be set on fire? I'm sure he's curious to see, but it's not like he doesn't know what's happening. I promise you, he knows what's happening in terms of this. Even though, like I said, it's not Central High. The more, like there's the Pulitzer Prize winning photographs we were thinking about from that day are actually at a high school a few miles away. But North High also knew, like all the schools are being desegregated. It wasn't like these kids just showed up, right? This has been talked about for months and months.
Look, every white family is sitting around eating Crisco fried chicken and talking about this at the dinner table.
Correct. It's been talked about, I'm sure, in his home and every other home of every other family of the white high schools in Little Rock, Arkansas, and frankly other places as well. But like I said, so there's no way he could say he's curious to see who these incredibly brave individuals would be. I mean, that might be maybe what he's curious about. Who has those kind of stones? Who's got cojones? That kind of intestinal fortitude, to show up where literally, anything could happen to you. I mean, this is 1957. It's this Deep South. It won't be the first time they've killed black children in that area. Like, it won't be their first time.
I'm 10 years old at the time. My family, most of my family is from Mississippi or Alabama at that. I mean, and even the ones that hadn't moved up north yet, we're talking about it on the telephone.
Everybody's talking about it. It's a huge story. Okay. Right. So it's not like he's curious to see, what's happening. I promise you, he knows.
Yeah, and it's not the first time he's seen black people, I'm sure.
No, I mean,
maybe in that particular setting,
certainly in that setting, it's definitely the first time he's seen that setting, because it's their first day of that setting. So no, no. The only black people he may have seen in the school before might have been members of the janitorial staff, perhaps, maybe. But I promise you, yes, school children.
Maybe he came up, probably babysat him while he was a little baby.
Maybe. Possible. Yeah, I mean, that's possible. But the thing is that he does realize that it's a big momentous event. Like, that's true. This is the biggest thing that's happened in his high school ever. There's no way something bigger than this has ever happened in the history of North High School.
But let's take it a little further now. Okay, so in 1957, as a 14-year-old kid, okay, let's just go with this thinking. Okay, I was curious. I wanted to see what was happening, and I didn't really understand the magnitude of the whole event. But here's another man that said that no one on his team better take a knee. Here's another man that has never hired a black head coach.
Right.
I mean, if these things, all of a sudden, like become non-factors also. I mean, maybe it's just a pessimist in me. But, judging from past experience, it would seem like America's team would have been one of the pioneers to break to bridge these gaps, to have a black head coach, or member of the front head office. You're America's team. You would represent all of America. Doesn't quite seem to be the same.
Yeah. So here's the thing that I realized, and I wish we had time to get into this, because Scipio Jones is where the young people that are at that high school where Jerry Wayne Jones was a sophomore, right? Probably 15 years old, 10th grader. And he talks about, here's the funny, he kind of shifts to how he got in trouble, right? How he got in trouble for being there because his football coach made him run or whatever it is. And plus he hadn't even made varsity yet. He was on the junior varsity at the time trying to make varsity. So he talks about how, we got punished by the football coach. But six students from Scipio Jones. And once again, I wish people had a chance to know more. Scipio Jones should be a nationally known figure, but he isn't. He was an incredibly courageous Black lawyer who was involved in the defending of the Henrietta, the survivors of the Henrietta Massacre in Arkansas, which may have been the single bloodiest bit of localized racial violence in the history of the United States. And most people aren't even familiar with it. By the most conservative figures, at least 314 Black people were killed in probably about 1 day's worth of violence. The numbers are probably much higher. Some people think it may be over 800 people. And this is not a town that's that big, right? It's a huge town. So it was an utter bloodbath in Henrietta, Arkansas. And ironically enough, at the end of it, 12 Black people, the only people charged with the crime because, Arkansas in the 19 teens. And this incredibly brave man, Scipio Jones, defended them and eventually won. Now, unfortunately, they never convicted any white people of anything, but at least these 12 men were not made to hang for simply trying to defend themselves against these white mobs.
I have my own horror stories about Arkansas, if people haven't heard them already. And this was in 1978, but we'll say that for a Monday show. But
right.
But
very briefly, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go down that path that far, but very briefly. So these 6 Black students and then 4 Black ministers accompany them. And obviously, on that, originally the school board was going to allow it to take place on September 4th. And then, things happened. So it gets pushed back. The big day gets pushed back to the 9th of September. And obviously there's a group of white students who, shoved their way to the front of the school. And in the back of that group, we see once again Jerry Wayne Jones. Now, you don't see him do anything untoward. You do see him, looking, as he said, very interested in what's happening. And George Miller, who's the principal of the school, and Superintendent Bruce Wright also came in, and they asked the 6 Black students to come inside to talk. They do get met by a group of white students who refuse to move, even after they are threatened with being suspended for 1 year. Eventually, they do end up meeting him at the school administration building, actually, right? Which is on 28th and Poplar, for those who care. And eventually, they get into the school, but it takes a while. Like, it goes on. This is a full-on standoff, right? The mayor, Almond Perry, has the National Guard called out. And 200 adults who are only affiliated with the school. I guess that they may have children there, but these are not people who work for the school. Not people. They're just, maybe Klansmen without their, garb or whatever show up. And so at some point, Superintendent Wright tells the press that, I don't think integration will work at this time, judging from the temperament of the crowd. And so it takes days. So it's not like this day just breeze in, everything's fine. No, they have to go back and go back and go back. It takes a while for them to eventually get into the school. And eventually a total of 8 Black students are admitted. And then they also had some students admitted into some of the elementary schools like Clendenin and Riverside. But it took 6 days. It starts on the 3rd and takes till the 9th until they finally got in. So it took 6 days worth of attempts for them to get into school. But yeah, and it was even more fraught with tension at the larger Central High.
Now stay with Jerry Jones now, dude.
I am going to stay with Jerry Jones. So Jerry Jones, once again, I can't claim to know what's in a young man's heart or a young man's mind. I have no idea if he had any ill will or if he just was, if he just wants to see it's a big thing and he wants to be close to it. He seems like the kind of guy who doesn't want to miss out on anything big, right? I'm guessing even from very early in his life, he wanted to see the big thing, right? He seems like a guy who's always been attracted to the show, right? I mean, he's the number one showman, and it's not even close among all the NFL owners. I mean, I don't know who number 2 would be, but they're way behind Jerry. Like, there's whoever number 2 is Jerry is so far out ahead of whoever that poor number 2 person is. They
That's
could
why
go.
we don't know his name.
Right. I mean, that's the point. It's like he's so far ahead of everybody else in terms of like, I mean, he's the only owner with a weekly radio show. I mean, it's not even close. So he's a guy who I believe him this part when he says, he knows the big thing. He wants to be close to it. That I believe, because I think that's exactly who he is. Something big's happening. I've got to be there. Right. That's who he is. I do think that he's being maybe slightly disingenuous by sort of acting like, like, I wonder what. No, he clearly knew what was going on. I mean, there's no way you couldn't know. It's your high school, right? A school where you've been for at least 1 year. This is your 10th grade. You were there in 9th grade. You were on junior varsity last year. You're trying to make varsity this year. You clearly are familiar with, like there's no way you could not know. If he had literally dropped off from another planet the day before, if he'd walked the streets the day before, because once again, this is not the first attempt. The day that's being shown is like their 6th try to desegregate that school. So it's not like it's something he's unfamiliar with. He just wants to see what's going to happen.
Well. The question is, do you think that LeBron was right about the press when he said as soon as a black man, and he referring to himself,
Right.
does something that there's all this scrutiny, but
Sure.
as Jerry Jones, like he
Well,
said,
I mean,
no one asked him one question about Jerry Jones, but
right.
immediately they were asking questions about Kyrie.
Right. He was relaying it to the fact that even after he and Kyrie were no longer teammates, anytime Kyrie did something, LeBron, what do you think? It's like, I think.
Well, not just Kyrie. I mean,
Right.
I mean, Kaepernick. Almost any time a black athlete did something, when they wore the shirts when he was with the Heat. I mean, so I mean. So do you think
he's the biggest, right? He's the biggest name in basketball, and so they ask him about anything they want to. And his point is, why didn't you ask me about this? And he's right, and he's 100% right. That if you're going to ask me about all these other social issues and all these other things, sometimes things that are only tangentially related to me as a person, why not this thing, right? And obviously, he was at one point one of the more famous Dallas Cowboys fans in the country, even though that changed a couple of years ago as we talked about the Black Lives Matter struggle and him distancing himself from the Cowboys at that point. Nonetheless, it was something that was known. If you are a sports writer, you knew about this, or at least you should, right? You should know about what went on between he and the Cowboys. And you should know what went on, regarding his previous relationship, because it wasn't like he and Jerry Jones, they're not friends, but not strangers either, right? They have met on multiple occasions. He has been to the stadium and been in the owner's box on multiple occasions. So this is not someone who's unknown to LeBron. And so LeBron's right to ask, why wasn't I asked?
I want to talk a little bit about college football here. And there was a couple coaching changes I want to ask you about.
Yeah, more still coming.
Rhule, after saying that taking the job that he did in the NFL was the worst decision that he's ever made, now he's returning to college ranks as the coach of Nebraska. Freeze is going to Auburn. Deion says that Colorado and some others have called, but he hasn't said whether or not he's given anybody an answer.
Right.
And Fuller is going to Wisconsin. What's your thoughts on these coaching changes? And as you said, there's more to come, but these are
more to come.
Struggling right now.
All of those were things that were expected. I don't know if Deion's going to, and I don't know if Deion knows if he's going to accept the Colorado job or not. I think that he doesn't. I think he wants eventually to move up to a bigger job. I don't think Colorado is the one he has his eye on, quite frankly. So, color me not shocked if he doesn't take it. I do know for a fact that it was offered to him, and I have friends and associates that are around that program, and I've even heard that there's a chance that the enemy could actually find his way there as well. Is what I've also heard if Deion, they don't land Deion. But the Rhule thing, I mean, I've been hearing about that literally since Rhule first got fired, I heard that he was sort of the number one target of the Cornhuskers.
But isn't he going right back into the same type of situation? I mean, except that it's college, of course. But I mean, the, to me, right now, for the next few years, and especially with the portal open, Nebraska's almost a no-win situation.
I would argue to at this point it's actually it could be a big win situation, and I don't mean big win like national championships. I don't think that's coming from them anymore. I think that the young people they used to be able to get to come from New Jersey. Remember how many players used to get from New Jersey? A pipeline. I never understood it. A pipeline from New Jersey to Nebraska. But I mean, Mark Rozier, Irving Fryer. How they did it, I don't know. But they used to at one point have a straight up pipeline of big time talent from New Jersey, right? These have guys come from Florida. And that isn't happening anymore. I don't know if it'll never happen, but I don't think it's going to happen right away. I think that here's what Matt Rhule will do for you. One, you're going to be much more competitive in the transfer portal. So some of these guys who aren't getting clock at Oregon or aren't getting clock at Texas, who aren't getting playing time at Ole Miss, are now going to consider Nebraska, but they might not have before. Matt Rhule is a big name. He's a good recruiter. Young players particularly like him. He appeals to he's a good motivator. He's not the world's most amazing exit, but we saw the success he had at Temple. He turned a program around there. He turned a program around at Baylor. It's clear that he can go into tough situations and win. I mean, Baylor, I think, went 2-10 the year before he got there. I think they might have been a one-win year, I think, right before he got there at Temple or something like that. I mean, something also very awful. And he turned both programs around. So it's clear that he's good at that. And Nebraska has better basic fundamentals in terms of things like support from the administration and financials than did certainly way over at Temple, and even slightly better than Baylor to some extent, because Baylor had just, they had a huge scandal. Like, there's no big black cloud over Lincoln, Nebraska. They just have not been able to attract big time recruits for
wheat money versus oil money.
Sure.
Corn futures versus oil futures. I mean,
I get all that. But here's the thing. I think first of all, they are now in the Big Ten as opposed to the Big 12, right? So since the time when they fired Bo Pelini, the last time they were really competitive, and I bet they wish they hadn't done that now, but that was last time they were really competitive. They got tired of going 8-4, 9-3, 8-4, 9-3, occasionally 10-2 under Bo Pelini. And like I said, it's sort of like when Philip Fulmer left Tennessee and the Tennessee got tired of going 9-3, and then they, right? Sometimes you don't know what you've got until it's gone. But I believe you will get them at least back to what they were under Pelini. I don't think anybody could get them back to where they were under Tom Osborne and Bob Devaney, winning national championships. I don't think that's ever coming back. But could they get back to being 8, 9, maybe even occasionally a 10-win program with the right working of the transfer portal? Of course they
could. Good evening, Mr. Scott. How are you doing this evening?
Very good, gentlemen. Very good, gentlemen. Thank you for having me. I was waiting in the queue. I didn't know if I was being sequestered. I was glad that you allowed me in. I appreciate that. I'm so humble, to be on such a STEAM program. I really am. It's my pleasure.
Don't worry. We're going to be talking about your Vikings pretty soon, and so
we're going to talk about your Steelers too. So you're not going to run away from that. So
oh no! I owned my Steelers from the beginning of the year. I said I would be very, very all right with a 6-11 record.
So you owned Kenny Pickett from the beginning of the year, huh? Wow. I'd have to get some replays of the show. I have to see if there's replays.
You can go back 2 years and get replays of me saying that Big Ben should have been gone a long time ago. So I've been very critical of my Steelers, but we'll talk about them, like I said, a little bit later when we start talking about the professionals here. But we were talking a little college before you came on, and we were talking about some of the new hires. But what did you think about some of the new hires? Deion says well, we said that we didn't think that Deion's going to Colorado. I think he has bigger fish to fry. But what do you think? Do you think Deion is going to leave Jackson State?
I agree with you. I think he has bigger fish to fry. I mean, I think the NFL is in his future. But I do want to just say a couple of things about what Mr. Kerr was talking about Nebraska, because my wife had a cousin. As a matter of fact, he still lives right around the corner from me. And he went to a high school here, Central High School, and his good friend, Russell Gary. And they played football together all the way from kids, all the way. And so we had a really great coach at Minneapolis Central, Earl Bowman, and he had a connection with Nebraska. And those two guys walked on at Nebraska, and they both went to the NFL. But at those days, Nebraska was a power. I mean, Nebraska was real. Mike Rozier, and I mean, they were a real power. And so my wife's cousin, Rodney Lewis, he played 2 or 3 years. And he went to New Orleans along with Russell Gary. Russell Gary played about 10 years in the NFL. And then he went to Philadelphia. Great defensive back. And those two guys were just real good friends of ours. Come over here. And my wife would cook for him. I mean, we knew these guys so well. And it's really funny to see how Nebraska now, when I talk to Rodney about Nebraska in the last few years, he can't believe it. He can't believe what he's watching from the days that he went there, the practices that he went through, all the games they win, all the big New Year's Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day games that they went through and played. So it's really funny to see how they have really brought the Big Ten. This expansion is it's for those of us that have, the Big Ten was really bigger than the NFL for me as a kid, because as a kid there wasn't no Viking, there wasn't no kid, there was no Twins. And so when the Gophers, the coach they had, I think I may have said this on the show before, our coach they had, Murray Warmath, that they had brought up from Mississippi. And so because they had a guy, Bernie Bierman, who they have
legendary Bernie Bierman, yeah,
buildings and stuff named after Bernie Bierman. So he came out and he did a great job for the first couple of years. But then it got so bad, they were hanging him in effigy. It was so bad that he couldn't even walk the streets. He couldn't go to the grocery store. So what he did, now he was from Mississippi now. So he said, okay, I'm going to save my job. I'm going to go down south. I'm going to find Carl Eller. I'm going to get Aaron Brown. I'm going to get Bill Muncie. I'm going to go up to Pennsylvania and get Sandy Stevens. I'm going to go get, how many Randy Stanton. I can just go on. And they go to the Rose Bowl. They go to the Rose Bowl. And they win it. And it's on national TV. And living here, I knew it was a great thing. My dad, he was just so ecstatic about it. But I didn't realize until I went to other parts of the country when they said that there's a black quarterback. Remember Sandy Stevens?
Yep.
He went to the Rose Bowl and won that thing on New Year's Day. So it's really something to see the evolution of what goes on in football. Now, Deion, I see, and also back in those days, I'll just say one more thing quickly. As a fan, when the Vikings first came, and that first, when they played the Chiefs. The first one I'll never forget. I was in college, and I'm watching the game, and all of a sudden I see the Chiefs lineup: Costa Richardson, Aaron Brown, Emmett Thomas, Willie Lanier. I'm like, this doesn't look very good to me. I don't like the looks of this. This doesn't look good. And it was a rout.
Minnesota, right?
It was a rout.
Yeah.
It was a rout.
Yeah, it is. When you watch some of the, when you look back at the history of some of these schools and you see where they are now, and of course, with the addition of USC and UCLA, that's going to push Nebraska a little further down the pool. We're going to see if there's going to be some conferences made up of some of the also rans.
Well, wait a minute. UCLA, are they coming to the Big Ten?
Yeah, both USC and UCLA, yes.
Yeah, they're both coming to the Big Ten.
This is ridiculous because you won't play everybody. Like now, this year, the Gophers, they don't play Ohio State.
Right.
You don't play everybody. I mean, that takes, to me, that takes some of the interest out of it to me. But
it brings in the finance, though, Mister. When you can talk finance. I mean, when you talk about
when you talk, I'm gonna say one thing about that. I'm gonna respond to that. My dad would say, when money's involved, strange things happen. Okay, and if a lot of money's involved, you better watch out. So I think this is what we're experiencing now.
Yeah, one of these days, Mr. Scott, there might only be 5 or 6 conferences in the whole country. But go ahead.
I was going to say that was, I can't remember who it was, a few years ago, wrote about the coming of the super conferences.
Yeah, we've talked about it before. The possibility of there only being 5. But then what happens to, the North Dakota states, the Hampton states, what happens to the HBCU?
Well, now, I want to stop you real quick. Hampton is not a state school. It's a private school, and they will tell you that to your face. All my friends who were pirates. But to some extent, we have the answer already to some of the questions you're about to ask. So North Dakota State clearly has had opportunities to move up. And unlike some of the schools that have, like James Madison's moved up, Appalachian State's moved up, NDSU, North Dakota State, has made it clear that we would rather be, I'll sort of misquote John Milton, but essentially, to reign in hell as opposed to serving in heaven. In that I think they have made it clear they prefer to be the cock of the walk at the, football championship subdivisions level, as opposed to being an also-ran, is the term you use, so I guess I'll use it again. As opposed to being an also-ran school, they'll be running to join the, I guess, Conference USA. It's probably where they would end up.
Well, I think for them, they're going to end up with the hopefully in a conference that has a strong hockey program, because that's their backbone of most of their sports. But
North Dakota State is a dominant football program.
They
but they put way more quarterbacks in the NFL than Ohio State has.
Well, they used to play. Youngstown State used to be on their schedule, but let's get back on subject here, Bill. And I'm gonna let you leave it off, because the Wolverines feasted on my Buckeyes as McCarthy out duels JC in a must-win game. Did CJ's performance cost him the Heisman, Bill?
I don't think he was going to win the Heisman anyway. But it means that he will not be even the main threat to Caleb Williams. What it really means, it was Caleb Williams to lose, and Caleb Williams had a great game with everybody watching. So no matter what CJ Stroud did, he probably wasn't going to win the Heisman. What this means is he probably won't be the number 2 guy. He may be the number 3 guy. It opens the door for the number 2 vote getter to someone else, like maybe Bo Nix. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe one of the running backs, though probably not. Bijan probably won't, because they didn't win enough games in Texas this year for Bijan to be number 2. But it just opens the door for somebody else to be number 2. Caleb Williams was the front runner going in, and he showed up and had an amazing game. So that closed the door pretty much on CJ, unless CJ would have had a historic performance that he didn't. So he wasn't going to win, probably most likely, and now just means he, like I said, ends up maybe 3rd in the voting, more likely than 2nd.
What did you think about that game, Mr. Scott?
Oh boy, it was Ohio State. When I look at them, for some reason, they're always in the top 10. They're always in, but their quarterbacks never move into the pro. I mean, have they had a quarterback that really has gone into the pros and done anything after Otto Graham? I mean,
what about
Otto Graham? First of all, time out.
Hold on, Mr. Scott. There's a guy that's the quarterback of Philadelphia right now. Have you ever heard of him?
That's true.
Huh?
He's young. He's getting started. We'll see. We'll see about that.
But you said since Otto Graham. Now, I think, isn't there another one in Chicago?
Where is Chicago? Well, in the league. I mean, what are they challenging for some championships now in Chicago? You're talking about the Bears, right?
Yeah. But their quarterback is relatively successful this season, correct?
Several of their quarterbacks have been relatively successful.
Okay.
Well, I'll agree with you.
Okay, all right.
I'll agree with relatively.
On behalf of my sister and everyone else who went to Northwestern University, I want to make it clear that Otto Graham is a graduate of Northwestern University, not Ohio State. Those who are somehow confused.
That was before my time, so I guess.
Right. Well, nonetheless, whoever whose time it was, don't start sending Otto Graham to Ohio State. Paul Brown.
I'm thinking of the Browns. Yes, Paul Brown and the Browns.
But Otto Graham only went there to play Ohio State. He wasn't coming from there.
Yeah. Next thing we'll have Newt Rockney in the backfield. Okay, Mr. Scott. Bill was just talking about Caleb Williams and his team, UCLA. Is
no, his team is not UCLA. His team is USC.
His team is USC.
You're determined to set people's hair on fire today.
No, I said, well, okay, maybe I might have misread it, but anyway, USC quarterback Caleb Williams leads his 9-1 Trojans past UCLA.
Okay.
So college football ratings have moved USC to number 4. Ohio State drops to number 5. Mr. Scott, do you agree? The difference between an 11-1 team and a 10-1 team?
I guess I'm gonna pass some on the college because I only really look at Big Ten because my calculator and I've been getting on such a roll with the pros. And my little guy is, he's down. I got my foot on him, so I've been kind of concentrating more on the pros.
Oh, okay. Well, we're going right to the pros after this. I'm glad you mentioned that. Bill, tell us a little bit about Caleb Williams. Do you think that you've already said that his performance makes him the Heisman Trophy favorite.
Yeah, he was the favorite even going in, and then he just cemented his status with the performance he had. Because once again,
but if you look at the preseason ratings, when USC I think was ranked number 15, Caleb Williams was ranked below. Let's see, CJ. The guy from Alabama.
He's below Bryce. Yes, he's below a lot of them.
Yeah.
And if you were smart, you made your bets in the preseason, like some people did. The fact is that, and of course, Bryce had a good season, but Alabama's having a down year. And CJ Stroud played well, except when it really counted. And Bo Nix actually had a pretty good reclamation season. But since they didn't get their biggest win they needed either. They aren't in the championship game. Utah is. So those are the things that if he had won, right, and if they had gone 10-1, if they hadn't been embarrassed the way they were against Georgia. Let's say they lose that game late to Georgia, and that's their only loss, and they're playing against USC in the Pac-12 championship game. Then Bo Nix would have been right there in the thick of it. But I mean, this was a year that broke all the right ways, frankly, for Caleb Williams.
Yeah,
he's a dominant athlete.
Hooker was rated above him at one
Hendon
time.
Hooker at one point was above him as well, and then the two things, obviously the loss to South Carolina and the injury that took place are the things that removed him from the playing surface. But I mean, I'm a huge fan of Alan Hendon Hooker. Alan's his actual first name, just like his father, who was a terrific player who I scouted as well at NCAA. But the Hookers, both the father and son, are both exceptional talents. And the only thing that works against him is the injury and his age. He's another 24-year-old due to taking the extra COVID year. So some teams will move him down the board because of his age, and the injury. But he was a legit, especially after the Alabama win. He was the odds-on favorite at the time of the Alabama win. And if they kept going like that, it would have been a fight between he and Caleb Williams, and he might have won it because of the SEC being seen as the preeminent conference. But the injuries and then the losses, like I said, took him out of the running.
Mr. Scott, rumor has it that Aaron Rodgers will be the starting Packers for the Packers in this week's game. According to Aaron, he says out of his mouth that he's open to possibly the Packers starting Mr. Love. But when you look at the way that he's acted since Jordan has been drafted and his remarks, do you really think that Rodgers would stand for a quote unquote benching?
Well, a couple of things on that. Regarding that question, would he stand for it? I don't see why not if he's hurt. I mean, if he's got a broken thumb and a rib injury, why not? Let's see, because he still has a name. He still, if it doesn't work out in Green Bay, California somewhere where he's from, or that could be a destination. I mean, we've seen all the great quarterbacks in the past. I mean, the Montanas, the names go on and on that have moved on from those things. So, I mean, that's, does he want to keep playing there in 20 below zero weather and it's cold out and this year in particular, I mean, the Vikings are going to win the division, and then they're going to go down in flames during the playoffs. But what's going to happen? So I don't know. I mean, he's got big contracts. He's got money on the line. He's still got a name. There'd be anybody that would take him. So if I was him, I wouldn't play. If I'm that hurt, there's really nothing that he can really do. They're too far back now. I mean, the Vikings already got 9 wins. They'd have to,
they'd have to run the table.
Yeah,
at the
pretty much. Yeah,
at the very least. Do you think the Packers will pick up Love's 5th-year option, Mr. Scott?
Well, I think they have to. I mean, I think he's they drafted him high. The Packers are kind of in a little bit of disarray right now. I mean, they lost the great receiver. I think that caused a lot of rancor. There's been a lot of problems with the general manager and Rodgers. Then his contract issue was a big problem when he signed the contract. So this is a wasted year for the Packers. It's unless they can catch fire and start winning a few games, if Rodgers can get healthy, they just have to decide if they're going to turn the page, and I think they're still trying to decide that. I think it's still on the table what exactly they're going to do.
What do you think, Bill? Should the Packers shut down Rodgers for the rest of the season, and do you think that they'll pick up Love's fifth-year option?
I think that as long as there is even any chance they can get back at least into the wild card consideration. Now, as was mentioned by, and Mr. Scott is 100% correct, they do not have a chance to win the division. They would, because not only would, no matter, even if they were on the table, they would need it would be impossible because Vikings would also have to lose every single game because they already own half of the head-to-head. There's no way they can't get more than a split with them. So yeah, I think it would be difficult for them to even tie. It's not even worth the discussion. However, could they claw their way into a playoff spot? Well, because they're in the NFC side, it's still mathematically possible. If they play in the AFC, not so much. The only real wrinkle on the NFC side is how good the NFC East is, where nobody has a worse record than 7-5. So that's who they have their eyes on. Their target, it's like when you're in a race and there's somebody who's setting the pace for you in a race. The pace setter for them right now is, of all people, the Washington Commanders. They've got to try to catch them.
Well, it sounds funny when you say it, Dan.
It does sound funny when you say
it. But it's true.
It is true.
Yes, I'll be honest with you. But nonetheless, it doesn't stop it from being a factual statement. That's the team they have to catch and they want to make the playoffs. You could chuckle, but it's just facts.
It definitely is. Now, do you think that they'll pick up Love's 50 option?
Well, as once again, I mean, I find myself agreeing with Mr. Scott a lot today, so must be something in the water or the air. But I mean, what is their other option? I mean, I guess they could decide to full on tank and then draft a quarterback. But it's something we haven't seen them do. It's not something we've seen them do. Like, we haven't seen them say, "Oh, we're just going to punt on a whole season and then hope we get an early draft pick." That's the only other option they'd have. If they let him go. And I like Kurt Binkert. I like a lot of people, but these are not people I think they want to go to war with. Undrafted free agents and guys like that. I think they want to go with somebody they drafted and moved up. I would like to remind you, in case you've forgotten, Mr. King, not just someone they drafted, someone they moved up and gave up draft capital to get. I find it highly unlikely that they will move on from him without ever really knowing what they have in him.
Hey, Aaron Rodgers reminds you constantly the fact that they moved up to get Love. He makes it very well known that the Packers moved up to pick a Jordan Love.
Yes.
Bill, do you think that TB12 and the Bucks can recover from their overtime loss to the Clowns? And should the Bucks start rebuilding instead of trying to reload every year?
Well, I mean, the decisions will be taken away from him. So I like to call my friend Mr. Salary Cap. Have you met my friend Mr. Salary Cap, Mr. King? If you haven't, I suggest you look into him. That decision is not theirs to make. The salary cap says that they will not be able to reload. The salary cap says they're going to have to rebuild. I've talked to Mr. Salary Cap about the Buccaneers. You see where the Saints are right now? That's where they're about to be. So if you look at the Saints of now, that's the Bucks of the future, James. So it doesn't matter what they want. It matters what Mr. Cap wants.
But the Saints have been pretty good at maneuvering that salary cap. We talked about that earlier this year, didn't we?
Well, nobody's been better than the Saints, but it doesn't matter. Eventually, you don't get to eat for free, James. At some point, you have to pay the bill. You can push it down the road. You can kick that can down, but at some point, there's no more road. The can is no longer. You can't kick it any further.
Yeah, that's the time you get up and go to the bathroom, isn't it, Mr. Scott? Yeah, when it comes time to pay the bill, my cell phone just rang. I got to take this call. But what do you think about Brady and the Buccaneers, Mr. Scott?
Well, Brady, Buccaneers. I mean, if the dog hadn't stopped the doo-doo, he'd have caught the rabbit. I mean, I thought Antonio Brown, maybe that was going to happen, and now Antonio Brown is throwing shoes at people and
possibly going to jail in Dade County.
Possibly going to jail, hitting her in a ponytail with a shoe. The thing about him he was on the Steelers.
Yeah, he was.
And so that coach, your coach, your favorite coach, you're so in love with,
Yes, sir.
So in love with, just amorous, oh God, sleep with his picture under your pillow. So loving. But one thing I will say about him and Antonio Brown, he's the one that got him to play. When he played for Tomlin, 1,500 yards, 15 touchdowns, all pro. So the ability is there, but now I think the big, Tampa, I think they're on the way out. I mean, it's obvious that Tom is distracted. I mean, their team is hurt. He's old. He's starting to almost look like a George Blanda now. He's starting to look like he's starting to look like, I mean, the wear and tear, I can't see them making much noise I just really can't see them making much noise. I think it's really this kind of be a slow demise with Tampa. I really do. I think Brady's going to hold on. He doesn't give up, doesn't quit. I mean, I still have respect for him, but I mean, his accomplishments, he should have really gave it up some time ago. I mean, this is really way past his use by date. Way past leaking oil now, which it's almost sad to see. Really, from what he was.
So like the Mets version of Willie Mays, we're getting close to, yeah.
Now, Mr. Scott, I don't want you to answer this question right now because I want you to have time to think about it. I'm definitely enamored with my coach, Mr. Mike Tomlin. I am. I'll admit that. So my question to you is, if we fire Mike Tomlin, who are we going to hire? Now, I'll let you think about that for a while, okay? And we'll come back to that, okay? So, Bill, Lamar Jackson tweets and then deletes his profane message in response to the criticism about his game and the Ravens start.
Correct.
How bad a look was this for Lamar? This is a three-part question, so I'm going to get your wind together here. Should Lamar stay in Baltimore for the long term? And how much of the responsibility falls on the Ratbirds' defense for their recent losses?
Okay, so in order, Lamar indicated to that man that he should have himself a nice, healthy snack. In terms of his response that he gave, are we after dark?
Yes, we're after dark.
Okay, so yes, he wanted him to consume this snack whole, apparently, and was it they used to say over the teeth and past the gums or whatever? So yes, watch out, stomach, here it comes. So he did tell this man to consume this particular part of the male anatomy, and It was definitely, I mean, it wasn't the best look, but I think people who tried to conflate it with homophobia are wide of the mark. I don't think anything there could be really construed as homophobic. I don't think that's at all what Mr. Lamar Jackson's intentions were. I don't.
See,
Once again,
but
I can't
see, Bill, and once again, I'm going back, kind of, to people that know my criminal background. There were two things that I used to find that would always produce the results that I wanted it to have. And number one was telling another male to
Hmm?
have at it, suck
Have
this,
at it. Yes.
you know,
Enjoy a healthy snack. Correct.
and,
Yes.
and the second would be slapping a man similar to the way that Will Smith did Chris Rock.
Yes. Yes. You're correct. That
Yeah.
would definitely produce some activity. Something will definitely happen at that point. So, do I believe that was the best way to handle it? Probably not. But I mean, I would remind people: Lamar Jackson plays football for a living. He is in an environment where things like that, and frankly, far worse than that, are said on a very regular basis. And this person had clearly annoyed him. And I know the particular reporter to whom he was responding. Not that there's, a contentious relationship, but this is someone who's known for sort of, kind of getting under people's skin sometimes. So I understand there's a little bit of history there. I'll put it that way. Not hatred or anything, but annoyance. He's annoyed Lamar in the past. And some of that past annoyance, I think, contributed to this response. So that's the first thing. You said, second, does Lamar stay or go? Well, I would like to introduce.
Is he the long term? Should he stay there long term? I mean,
Okay. So in answer to that, I would like to turn you to my friend, Mr. Benjamin Franklin. Now, in addition to being a statesman, an orator, an inventor, he also is on the $100 bill. And depending upon how many of these Mr. Benjamin Franklins, the Ravens are able to commit to him in a contractually guaranteed fashion, because they're more than willing to pay him upwards of $200 million. They don't want to give it to him in a contractually guaranteed fashion.
215, as a matter of fact.
They would prefer that this money be contingent upon other things like performance, health, that kind of thing. Mr. Jackson, who, as you know, represents himself, so keeping that 3%, no, not having to share that with anybody, would prefer to have all of the money in a contractually guaranteed fashion where he gets it no matter what. And that's really where the bone of contention is. Because he is a quarterback who so much of what he does is based on his physical ability and mobility, the Ravens worry that if he is injured and they're on the hook for this money, even if he comes back, he may not be the same player. So they would prefer to give him the money, like I said, not guaranteed. That's the real, that's what the whole thing is. If they can get together on what percentage of the money in this contract will be guaranteed, there will be a very long-term deal hammered out, because just like with Mahomes and others, and Allen's deal as well, they will stretch this deal out over more years because it gives them more flexibility to move money around. So money that starts out as salary then moves over to bonus when they need it to be a bonus, and then moves back from bonus to salary other years, right? That's how they managed to kick the can down the road. We talked about Kai Haley. That's his name. Kai Haley is the guy that's in charge of that part. People know Mickey Loomis, and Mickey Loomis is and was the GM of the Saints, but he's not the person who runs the cap. That's a black man named Kai Harley who actually runs that for the Saints. But that's sort of one of his innovations, was these long-term quarterback deals where each year, depending upon the needs of the team, you move money back and forth between roster bonus, workout bonus, salary, all that kind of stuff. So that's what the team wants to do. They don't want it to all be guaranteed. They want to be able to move that money around. And Mr. Jackson would like them to say, yes, we give you this money no matter what. And so that way you know how much money you're getting, which most football players don't, right? Most football players know their only part you know you're getting is what's guaranteed.
And what about that Radbirds defense?
Well, yeah, the defense is kind of a mess. And the biggest issue for them is two things. One is, being able to just play individual coverage in the back end. I like Marcus Peters. He's fun to watch, but he struggles mightily against top-level receivers when he's just left on an island. He is much better in a situation where he can play some sort of trap coverage, where he can slip off of his man and jump routes. He's great at that. One of the best. I mean, not since maybe Asante Samuels can you find someone who is that good at sort of trapping quarterbacks by falling off your man and jumping a route of another receiver, right? Not the guy even you're covering. So he's better at that than he is at actually covering his own man. And that's been known by anybody who really watches his game going back to college when he was at Washington. But they don't have the other corner, right? They don't have that person who's just truly a quote-unquote lockdown corner. That's a term I think is being misused, quite frankly. There's lockdown corners like Mike Haynes, right? Those guys don't come along very often, but they don't have anybody even vaguely resembles that. They don't have young Pat Peterson. They don't have anybody that you can point to and say, that guy is a true lockdown corner. So they have an issue there. They have one really good corner and one productive corner who isn't great in individual coverage. Their safeties are better tacklers than they are in coverage. Chuck Clark is basically a miniature linebacker. They drafted from number 14 from Notre Dame. I can see him in my mind. But he's also a hybrid player. He's not really great in coverage. He's not great in coverage against receivers. Let me be more clear. He's pretty good against tight ends. He struggles against smaller, quicker receivers. And that's, once again, something that was revealed on his tape back at Notre Dame. So you have this guy who's really a good overhang defender, right? He's really good as, once again, that hybrid role, sort of like a dime backer, like what Malcolm Jenkins did later in his career when he moved from being out on the corner to a guy that was defending slots and tight ends. So you don't have great coverage in the back end. And who's their great pass rusher? They don't know the answer to that, quite frankly, James. So when they let people like Judon go and Zadarius Smith go, and then, in free agency and then flourish in other places, the people that they've brought in, and Justin Houston isn't bad, don't get me wrong, but he's 36, I believe, something like that. So he's very close to the end of his career. And the young guys they have, like Ojabo, aren't quite ready. They've revealed that they aren't quite ready to be productive. So they have a gap. They have old guys and guys who aren't quite ready. They have no one who's in their prime in the pass rushing role. And if you can't rush the passer consistently in the NFL, I mean, that's what the game is about now. If you can't get consistent pressure on the quarterback, you just can't win games, not against good teams.
Mr. Scott, what's your assessment of Lamar? Do you think he should be in Baltimore long term? I don't know whether you got a chance to see the tweets or not, because it was deleted almost as soon as it was put up. But I'm sure you get the gist of what the tweet was about, and how much of the responsibility of the Ratbirds' record is on the defense.
Well, this quarterback thing, it's so inequitable. I mean, with Mad Dog Watson, who got all this money guaranteed, and he's just now coming back now. Mm-hmm. And so Lamar, I mean, to me, he's as good as Mad Dog Watson, and then he's certainly as good as Kirk Cousins, who got a big guaranteed contract. So, this treating some players where it's, if you play or you're
Mr. Scott, rumor says that Kirk Cousins took a gun to his talks.
Well, he's a great businessman. He's a great businessman, obviously.
That was definitely straight highway robbery.
But I'm just saying that they're going to give some of these guys guaranteed. Mad Dog Watson, what did he do? I mean, what did he give to get? He said he's been suspended. He's coming back this week in Houston. I talked to my buddies down there, see if they're going to the game, and they said they're thinking about going to the game just to see the girls that are supposed to be there to protest. The massage girls are supposed to be there too to protest in there. So this whole quarterback thing, I mean, the thing has been set. I mean, Mahomes should be guaranteed. I mean, he's the man. He's the main man. He should be up there and to get whatever sets the standard. I mean, it should be some hierarchy. And these contracts where it's like, well, if you get hurt, we're not going to do this. If you don't do this, I mean, I understand the incentives that say, okay, you make the Pro Bowl, you're in the top 5 of statistics, you're in the. I get that. That all makes sense. Performance based. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But anybody can get hurt. Anybody, these things can happen. So these whole quarterback contracts and things really, I don't know what the league does with this, because the quarterback is your face, and if it's already set that, like Mad Dog Watson, he's guaranteed the biggest contract in the league, and he's only playing half the year, and he has all this baggage over it. So what do these other quarterbacks think about that? What are they going to want? What are they? So I think it's a big quandary. I mean, the whole league is. And before we go, I do want to just get some input on the Jerry Jones situation. What people think about that? I mean, we don't have to do that now, but I mean.
Well, we had talked about that earlier, but I'll come back to you on that when you tell me who's going to replace Mike Tomlin. I
can go into some of that now. First of all, I don't understand how Mike Tomlin got that job, because he was the youngest guy, and he had just been a defensive back coach for Denny Green here at the Vikings. And he left there and gets a head coaching job at Pittsburgh. A story, I'm talking about Chuck Noll, and he's going to get the head coaching job.
But now,
I can answer that.
But hold on. But now he's already been there. We're not talking about how he got there. I asked you specifically who available would be a replacement for Mike Tomlin.
Eric Bieniemy.
Oh, please. Bieniemy, evidently he's been interviewing longer than Tomlin's been on the job.
That's what I mean. I don't. Of course, he's gone to Super Bowls as a coordinator, but he doesn't even get a chance. And Tomlin never showed he could coach. I mean, he could be a head coach. Hasn't shown that he had even been a coordinator. He wasn't even a coordinator.
Hold on. Does Mike Tomlin have a Super Bowl ring?
Yes, he does, and I think he's done a fantastic job there.
Okay,
I think he's done a fantastic job. I'm not taking that away from him at all.
So you think that Eric Bieniemy, without Andy Reid, is a better coach than Mike Tomlin?
I don't even think that's the issue. I think that Mike Tomlin, when you get into these things, sometimes you wear out your welcome for who knows how many reasons or what. He's been there a while. The team is heading down.
He's had one losing season. One.
Denny Green got fired after he didn't even finish the season. When he was winning every season, and then he was losing. He lost the
Denny Green
died in
Denny Green's not
Corey Stringer died. The team was going 11 and they had won 4 or 5 games. They fired him before the season was over. So this is the NFL, man. It's a big boy thing.
One of the things that the Steelers franchise is most known for, maybe the thing they're most known for, is structural stability. Everyone knows that. And that's why people, when they get there, they'll stay there forever. And it's one of the things people know about the Steelers. Now, in answer to your question, how he gets the job, frankly, it's the Rooney Rule. He was not supposed to be one of the people they were going to seriously consider to hire. He was a person they literally brought in to satisfy the Rooney Rule, believe it or not. And he ended up being so impressive. When they brought him in, they said, we found our guy. They didn't think he was going to be the guy.
But he's the only guy that has benefited from the Rooney Rule. He's the only guy. Who else has benefited from it?
Well, I mean, Brian Flores, who's now on his staff, was another person that was a Rooney Rule Would you like to know a list of the guys who ended up getting jobs in the NFL because of the Rooney
Hey,
Rule?
man, we got a
but
job.
not head coaching jobs. But not head coaching jobs.
Well, Flores
There's
was
only
head coach.
32 of them. How many? There's only 32, Mr. Scott. How many do you want them to have?
Well, there should be more. Mr. Scott's right about
Yes,
that.
of course, there should be more than one.
There should be more.
or two.
But there are guys who got their chance because of the Rooney Rule, and he's not the only one. There have been others, and I can give you the list if you'd like.
So, Mr. Scott,
Yeah.
I want to take you back to another question that you was asking before
Sure.
about the Jerry Jones thing.
Sure.
What did you think about the way that LeBron handled that? And do you think that Jerry Jones, are you buying Jerry Jones' exclamation about it? I mean, I was 10 years old, so I mean, I don't even know. You might not even have been around yet. You might have just still been a thought. How did you take Jerry's response? It's like he was just curious, as opposed to LeBron, as every time a black player does something, and we can go all the way back to when he was with the Miami Heat and they wore the Black Lives Matters T-shirt, or you can go back to some of the other things that he was talked about, which led to the famous Fox News commentator telling him to shut up and dribble. So, what do you think? Do you think that he has a right to be critical of the mainstream media because there seems to be a difference of coverage here? If you're an owner, if you're a player, Jerry had even protested, and this was when LeBron was a Dallas Cowboy fan. He said that anybody that took a knee on his team would be immediately fired. So, what were your thoughts about Jerry Jones? He hasn't complied with the Rooney Rule. He hasn't interviewed a black guy for his head coaching job. And when you look back at some of the things, that Jerry has had a chance to do as America's team, you would think that they would be one of the leaders in putting minorities in head leadership, giving them opportunities. Hell, they're supposed to be America's team. Isn't that what America's about? So, what was your thoughts on Jerry Jones' comments and LeBron's rebuttal?
Well, I want to thank you, JK3, for that very extremely biased setup for this particular question. I think it's very biased.
Hey,
you want to know what I think? I'll tell you what I.
That's why I asked you what you thought. I gave you my thoughts. I asked you for your thoughts.
Yeah, you're biased. Okay. I think.
have no problem admitting when I'm biased.
If I can have the floor for just a second, but I'll rest. But if I can have the floor for a second,
go ahead, Mr.
What I will say, a couple of things on this. One, looking at that picture, my mother, born and raised in Birmingham, going to Parker High School. At that, Jerry Jones is maybe 10 years older than me. I think he's 80. I'm 71. I'll be 72. I mean, at that time, he just seemed to be something was happening there. He's a student at the school, for one. Okay. At that time, at 15, 16, what is he, a junior? Sophomore, junior.
He's sophomore year, beginning of his sophomore year.
Sophomore year. He's going to school and all this is commotion in the beginning. So he just seems to be looking at it. I didn't see him put his hands up. I didn't see him any gestures that said he had any anger. He just seemed to be looking at it. And so at that time, there were some students in front of those, and I met some of those Little Rock. I met Ernest Green, who was one of the Little Rock Seven, who came up to Minnesota and ran a program that I was part of. So that time, it's so different. I mean, what did he do? And as far as Jerry Jones' character, the only thing I can say about that is he didn't want Dak Prescott to be a quarterback. There was another guy that he wanted. I can't think of what his name is, even if he's still playing. But there was a guy he wanted, and so Dak kind of fell in, and he said, what the heck? We'll take him. Okay. So Dak has been suspect ever since he's been there. Dak has been, and then he suffers almost what seemed like a catastrophic injury.
Sure.
Now, what does Jerry Jones do? Gives him the contract anyway. He gives the man a contract. I mean, so I think and for LeBron to come out and try, this is just some old woke stuff that some of these people are doing. There's a bunch of he should just stick to what he 39, 40. The Lakers are floundering. Get back to doing what you got to do with and I'm not going to go as far as shut up and play with that, but get back and focus on that statement to him was so phony to me, so perfunctory to just try to show, see, I'm one of the woke type people now, see, and I think he should. No. Jerry Jones giving that contract to Dak, and he stood by him. And he has been suspect the whole time, and he went through the catastrophic injury where he didn't even have the contract then. He didn't even, and Jerry still gave it to him. And so I just think it's kind of a hype thing. I think it's the world we're into, talking about the Kanyes and all this stuff is getting mixed up when it really has nothing to do with the issue at hand. I think people are just kind of getting a little bit carried away with, I mean, people like, and not to get too off track here, but people like Kanye, who clearly has some problems. He clearly, I mean, when he's going to mess up money like that to that level, this is a guy that's not thinking clearly. He has some issues. And so LeBron, to me, he didn't need to even get involved in that. I mean, it really didn't even affect him. It didn't even have anything to do with him.
Oh man!
Well,
You really brought out all my prejudices right there, Mr. Scott. I just want you to address a couple things here.
I'll listen. I'm all ears.
So when he wore the Black Lives Matter T-shirt in Miami, when he spoke out about Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, not even saying anything to the extent that Kanye West or anybody else has said, but just taking a knee. And now, unfortunately, at the time that this picture was taken, Jerry Jones was 14, I was 10. We had 3 radio, as I was saying before you came on, we had 3 TV stations, and all 3 of those stations covered that event. So for him to say that he was just curious, I mean, was he curious when he saw the pictures of the dogs attacking the people crossing Selma Bridge? Was he just curious when Malcolm X got assassinated? I mean, at some point, for a guy that wants to have his face in the front of everything, shouldn't he know a little bit more about what he's representing? At 10 years old, I knew about what was happening. I mean, because like I said, it was on every TV station. It was on every radio station. And you didn't really have a choice because you either watched those 3 stations or you turned the TV off. So do you think that all of our athletes, including the white ones, should just be quiet and just tend to their sport, Mr. Scott?
Well, your question is really kind of kind of all over the place to me. I mean, I just look
Okay,
at
okay. The question is, do you think that all athletes, including white ones, should stick to their sports and don't make comments about social issues?
oh, okay. So that's the question. Yeah, I think if they're qualified to, I mean, I think you hear Shaq say something about it. You hear Barkley say things about it. You hear Stephen A. Smith, and a lot of the things they say, I think it's a bunch of BS. If they're qualified to say it, I don't have a problem with that. But if you're an athlete, if you're a car mechanic, if you're a whatever position job you have, anybody can have an opinion. As a great coach Denny Green said, the great thing about America is everybody can have opinion. And what's even greater is you don't have to listen to it. And I mean, I think that's kind of what it is. I mean, they have a right to say what they think, but then they have also to bear the brunt of what their words have said. And whether it's good or bad, whether it's right or wrong, whether I agree with it or not, they do have the right to say that. But if I've got millions of dollars on the line and I've got business deal, I'm going to think about that. And if they want to tread into that deep water, so be it. Go ahead. That's not for me to say whether they should or shouldn't. It's I mean, that's just like me. I'm going to have my say, whatever it is. I'm going to give my opinion, say what I think. I mean, I don't have on the line what LeBron does. We have on the line what these high profile people do. And so with the media and the way that they frame these things and they push these things to us to make us think a certain way, it's we're in quite an interesting time now with the different medias and the Twitters and all these things out there. There's a lot of things to digest. So it's not for me to say who's right or wrong. I'm not going to get it.
Yeah. Well, that's part of what the dichotomy that LeBron was pointing out, that, he's always, these things are being brought to him. And he was saying, why isn't this right? All these other things are being visited upon me, things that have nothing to do with me, right? I haven't been a teammate of Kyrie's for years, but when Kyrie does this, all of a sudden I have all these Kyrie questions, right? When this happens, I have all these questions about this player. Sometimes the players he's never played with, sometimes he gets asked about when things happen. He just happens to know them, right? So he's being asked about all these other things. He says, well, why isn't someone asking me about that? He was at one point a very prominent Cowboys fan, has been in the owner's box on multiple occasions with Jerry Jones, all these other things. And for some reason, no one asked him about this. That's what he was pointing out, the dichotomy. Why are all these things being visited upon me, but not that?
We had talked about it a little earlier. That's why I wanted to get Mr. Scott's take on it. But let's kind of get back to this game. I think the Bills are now leading 24-10.
Oh, really? Really? Wow.
I mean, 20. Is it 24-10 or 24-7? It's a commercial right now. I have to look on there. But
the Pistons beat the Dallas. Pistons beat the Mavericks. I don't know.
Did they? Okay. So, Mr. Scott, do you think that the red zone turnovers are becoming an issue for the Bills quarterback, Josh Allen?
Boy, I hate to answer this with this answer, but I think the refereeing is one of the big issues with the turnovers and the calls and what's a catch, what isn't a catch. Josh Allen, I think he probably should stay in the pocket more. I mean, I think it seems like he might have some injuries. I don't know that he's 100% healthy. When I see him moving around and running, I know he's had this elbow issue for one, and I think they should have a good enough team where he might want to adjust until
It's 24-7. Folk had missed that field goal in the first half, so it's now 24-7, and the Patriots have the ball.
Okay.
But even Mr. Scott, I don't know whether you're watching this game or not, but I
No, I
think it
can't
was
see it.
the second series of downs. Josh Allen tried to leap over a player to make a touchdown. Didn't make it that time, but it's hard to I guess have a player control those instincts because he wants to win so much. But Bill, I want to go the other way with you because, as I said, the score is 24-7. Do you think that perhaps the Pats are too entrenched in the belief of Mac Jones being their long-term solution at quarterback?
I don't know if they're entrenched in that belief.
Well, they benched Zappy. I mean, they could be looking at Zappy now. He's like I said, it's 24-7, and it's 2 minutes gone in the fourth quarter.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't think they see either of them as maybe the long-term answer. They want to see more what they have in the guy they took in the first round at 19th overall than a guy they took in the late 5th, I believe. So, I mean, that's how most teams work, James. Occasionally you'll see a team, roll the dice on a guy that's a late round draft pick over a guy they took in the first round. But that's not how most teams work. They're going to make absolutely sure. I don't know if they're sold on him, but they want to make absolutely sure. So they're going to give Michael McCorkle-Jones every chance possible to show if he is or isn't the guy before they move on to anybody else. But if I know anything about William Steven Belichick, he's going to be willing to move off from Michael McCorkle-Jones if he doesn't show he's the guy, but he wants to give him every possible chance.
Mr. Scott, you kind of answered this question already, but you can expand on it, or we can go on to the next one. The Vikings are 9-2, but Kirk Cousins is number 23 when it comes to QBR. Can the Vikings continue to be successful with an average or at best inconsistent play from the quarterback position?
Well, it's the Vikings. It's kind of like I've said about the Vikings. If they were a heavyweight fighter, okay, a 9-2 record, no knockouts, 2 losses by KO, devastating KOs. Does that give you a lot of confidence in them as a fighter? No knockouts, all wins, razor thin decisions, razor thin every
decisions, yeah.
Featherweight punches, kind of a Jimmy Young type.
There we go.
Wow, you went way back there, Mr. Scott. Jimmy
Young. And so, no real firepower. I mean, they haven't really had a real resounding win. And I think, but the thing about that is nobody in the league really is standing out. I mean, there's really no quarterback. I mean, other than, who's the best quarterback? Other than Mahomes, there's nobody that this is the guy that's going to lead us to the thing. Nobody else has a real quarterback that they think is the real guy. I mean, Cousins is, I guess, as good as anybody. I mean, right now in the league. I mean, and especially you got Jefferson, Thielen stays healthy. They got that tight end now that came in, Delvin Cook. I mean, so there's really no excuse for them. They're going to get the division, but I still say their record is still, like I say, I want to see a knockout. I'd like to see a knockout,
Okay. Bill, 49ers quarterback Jimmy Porn went from counted out to counted on. Where do you think the Porn King will be suiting up next year?
Well, as it stands, he'll probably still be in San Francisco. Because they have Lance on a rookie deal, they don't have to rush him. They're not paying him that much. They can give him most of next year to keep improving, both physically and mentally. And then if they're just winning, if at the bye, I don't know where the bye will be next year, but let's just say for giggles that the bye is at week 11. If when week 11 rolls around, they're 8-2, they'll keep riding with Garoppolo. Now, if they're 4-6, then at the bye week he will be unceremoniously moved to the side, and then Trey Lance will get the job. And then unless he messes up, he'll probably keep the job. But this buys Garoppolo more time to show other teams, if there's teams that have been trading for him, here's what you get. And it frankly buys the 49ers more time to, well, one, physically heal Trey Lance. I mean, right now they couldn't play Trey Lance if they wanted to. He's not healthy. So, I mean, he has to be the rest of the option for this year. And next year, a healthy Trey Lance and he will have a camp battle. And if Lance wins, he'll have the job. But I don't think Lance will win it just clean coming out of camp. I think it will take until the bye week for Lance to win it, if Lance wins it. But I think he wins it at the bye week, most likely. So it won't be until the bye week of next year that I think Lance overcomes Jimmy Garoppolo.
But I don't see why people don't like Garoppolo. I just don't see why they don't like him. I mean, I think that Belichick is probably upset he didn't keep him, because I think that was the original plan, that they would have Garoppolo, but Brady wouldn't quit. Right. So, yeah. I think Garoppolo is a good, serviceable quarterback. If you put something around him, I think he's as good as any. With this mediocrity we're seeing now, I think he's.
You can't put much more around him, Mr. Scotty. He's got Debo, he's got McCaffrey, he's got George Kittle, he's got Ayuk. I mean, there's not he's got a decent offensive line. There's not a whole lot that you can put around him. But Bill, I want to go back to your point.
They're dangerous.
Trey Lance was the starter. Supposedly, you can't lose your starting job through an injury.
Yeah, but that's what you'll just say. It happens all the time.
But hold on now. The 49ers were ready to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
So what? I mean, how can they possibly not give Trey Lance the starting job, at least on paper, coming out of training camp?
Because they don't have to. Because you can say
they've already done it. They've already done it. They did it this year. If Trey Lance doesn't get hurt, either Jimmy Garoppolo's in somebody's booth or he's selling cars somewhere.
Oh, he wouldn't be in.
But they had to have seen something. They had to have seen something at the beginning, because you're right. You're right, James. They had given the job to Trey. That was supposed to happen. They hadn't even signed Garoppolo. He wasn't even signed at the beginning. And so they were going to move. They must have saw something. They must have saw something. I don't know if he got hurt. I don't know if Trey got hurt. But they must have saw something that told him to give Garoppolo $10 million to stay here.
Right. Well, that was another thing. They got him on the cheap too. That was another thing. They won't be able to get him for that, So
right. So there's no reason for them to move on from him now. But remember that, as the old saying goes, yesterday's price is not today's price. If he was trying to get more than twice that much. They got him for less than half of what his original asking price was. They have no reason to move on from him until Trey Lance definitively shows he's the better option, which thus far hasn't happened. So no, they don't have to give him the job back, and my guess is they won't.
I wish I was as optimistic about that as you are, because I think
that's the number one way to lose your job in the NFL is due to injury. It is the number one way to lose your job in the NFL is injury. That's why guys try to fight through injuries, James. It's not just because they love their team and their teammates. I'm sure it's part of it. But the main reason guys take all those Toradol shots is to try not to lose their job.
I think that Trey Lance is going to start off, regardless, unless the 49ers win the Super Bowl. Uh, because
I don't even think it takes all that.
because
I
because
think
get
they look
because
good.
get, because getting to the playoffs and getting to a Super Bowl evidently has not done anything good for Jimmy Garoppolo. So,
Well, I mean, here's the two things that
I mean,
one.
the man takes you to a Super Bowl. He loses in the playoffs 2 years in a row, and you give the job to somebody else.
Well, just like what happened with Alex Smith, right? I mean, Alex
Alex
Smith
Smith has never been more than a game manager. We're not going to,
and Jimmy Garoppolo's been more than a game manager.
as he
Exactly. When was that?
as he had the opportunity though. That's what
Well,
I'm saying.
he's getting the opportunity now, James. That's what I'm telling you. Here is his opportunity. Because he is on a contract that makes him very affordable, there is no reason to move on from him, right? So I think
Well, hold on. I'm gonna ask Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott, you're the opening act for let's say the Manhattans. We'll say the Manhattan. You're the opening group for the Manhattans.
Well, we did open for Harold Melvin in the Blue Note, so you can use that.
Even better. You're the opening act for Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. Harold has a sore throat. Because you go up there and substitute for Harold for the rest of that concert, do you think that all of a sudden Harold's going to turn that job over to you? I mean, like I said, Trey Lawrence was the starting quarterback this year. I don't care whether he got hurt, whether he went out and got hit by a buffalo running across the street. He was the starting quarterback. The team and the organization told Jimmy G, you can kick rocks until they got the right price. So once again, I don't see how you're going to tell Trey Lance after you've given him the job that now all of a sudden, well, Jimmy G was the better quarterback, and we should have started. We should have stayed. It's almost very similar to me to what's happening with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. Aaron is getting old, but he doesn't want to admit it. So therefore, he doesn't want, even though he might say, "Well, it's okay with me if you look at Jordan Love." But I don't think that Jimmy G will get that same.
Well, the difference is money. The difference is money, right? So Aaron Rodgers has them, as they used to say, over a barrel. He has a huge contract. Jimmy Garoppolo does not. So it'll be an open competition with the 49ers because they can afford to have an open competition. They can afford to keep both of them because one of them's on a rookie deal. The other guy is signed for $10 million. They don't have to move on from one of them.
Isn't that a 1-year contract for $10 million?
I believe they have a second an option for a second. I'm almost
not at $10 million though.
I'd have to look to see what the
but if he does a good job and they don't want him, he'll have jobs. I mean, he'll have places he can go. He'll have a market. And if I could just say, in regards to your analogy about, we opened for Harold Melvin in the Blue Notes and we were doing the sound check. And so the singers walk in. They got their suits and everything. And I seen them walk in. And at that time, I thought Teddy Pendergrass was Harold Melvin. And so when they walked in, I said, where's Harold Melvin? Because Teddy Pendergrass wasn't with him. And this little guy comes up to me on the stage and he says, I'm Harold Melvin. So just to clear that part up.
And that's what's happening in San Francisco. This little dude named Jimmy Garoppolo is walking up and saying, I'm Harold Melvin. So unless and until Teddy Pendergrass shows back up, able to run again, right? Because that was a fairly serious injury that Teddy had. So he needs to come back and show he can be what he was, and he needs to have learned the offense. So like I said, it'll be a pure camp battle. to the best quarterback will win, and they are in the position where they don't have to play anybody they don't want to play because they've got 2 quarterbacks for less than what 1 quarterback normally costs. They're sitting pretty, James.
And those behind the scenes things with quarterbacks. I mean, look at where's Nick Foles? Is he still in the league anymore?
Yes, he's still in the league.
Yeah, he's still in the league. He's still
Where? Where?
Isn't he backing up Lawrence in Jacksonville?
In Jacksonville.
He never plays. We never hear. This is a Super Bowl.
He's not the starter.
He's not. Why do you think they paid Lawrence all that money?
But I'm just saying that this is a Super Bowl quarterback, and he can't. He's a backup. He doesn't even get in. He holds clipboards now.
Yeah, well, he was doing the same. Nothing happened when he went to the Colts either. I wish Mike was here. He could tell you about that. Let's see who else we want to talk about.
Washington moved on from Mark Rippon very shortly after that.
Yeah,
Errol Morrell, played in 2 Super Bowls, but went right back to being a backup. Right? I mean, it happens.
Yeah. Mr. Scott, the Seahawks are on a 2-game losing streak. Is it more likely that they will re-sign Geno Smith or that they'll pick up a quarterback late in the first round?
Well, the league just had, I think Geno's doing a tremendous job. I mean, I really think he's getting his chance. He's a veteran. He's been around. He obviously knows what he's doing. But do they want to anoint him? I would doubt it. I mean, I would doubt it. I mean, I would think they are going to draft somebody he's doing a good job. And look, we haven't seen how far he's going to go this year. But, I mean, there's something that says even these Case Keenum was here, got us to the NFL in the championship game. After that, where it bounces around. So I think it's a hard question to answer.
Bill, on his All Things Covered podcast, ex-Cardinals teammate, cornerback Patrick Peterson said, Kyler Murray doesn't care about anyone but Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray responded by saying, he's on some weird shit. Somebody must be smoking. Bill, what does the eye test tell you about the 4-8 Cardinals?
Well, some of what we're seeing is essentially, and I don't want to make Patrick Peterson sound older than he is, but there's a bit of a generational shift between the two. So when Patrick Peterson was coming up, when he was in high school, right, Kyler Murray would have been an infant, I believe. I think Patrick is 35 or something, 36 or 5. And Kyler is 24. So there's about 12 or 13 years age difference between the two of them. And football culture changed. And once again, not to bring this up again, but Kyler's first love was what? Baseball, right? He fell in love with football also, but his first love was baseball. Baseball is a very individualistic sport. I mean, it's a team sport, but guys are concerned with their individual performance. It's a team sport. I won't say a name only. It's not a name only because you do certain things together, but especially as a hitter, it's a very lonely time. I mean, nobody can really help you when you step into that box. So you develop an individualistic mentality to some extent as a baseball player. If you're a pitcher, if you're a hitter, almost any position you want to mention, because so much of it is on you, even though it's a team sport. So his mindset is different from a guy who's a hardcore football guy. Basketball and football you're more codependent as players than you are in baseball. If you're a great hitter, the guy who bats ahead of you, the guy who has behind you certainly have something to do with your performance, but they aren't as determinative as your center if you're a quarterback, or your left tackle if you're a quarterback, or your receivers if you're a quarterback, or your quarterback if you're a receiver. I mean, if your quarterback is terrible, you can be the greatest receiver ever. It doesn't matter. You can't perform. So there's a mindset difference and a generational difference between these two players. And I think that there's a middle point where the truth probably lives between what these two people are saying. I think that Kyler Murray has a level of commitment to the game that he thinks is just fine, right? He practices probably pretty hard. He studies some, a good amount, but maybe not as much as a guy like Peyton Manning did, probably. But he's had a lot of success with the way he's been doing it. However, this is the NFL. And he wants to be the greatest of the great. If he wants to get to the very top, he will have to leave alone like the hours he spends playing Call of Duty. He is the sponsor of a competitive Call of Duty gaming team, for those who don't already know. So he's an owner. He's a team owner of a competitive esports team that plays games, including Call of Duty. And he plays hours and hours of Call of Duty almost every night. I know people who've played. I know people who know his gamer tag, and when he shows up, they can go out and play him. So he spends a lot of time playing Call of Duty and other games, but mostly Call of Duty. And that, to a guy who's a certain age, and Patrick Peterson, for a football player, is an older. He's on the other side of 30, right? And in the NFL, that puts you in, uncle. And he's well above 30. He's close to almost grandpa stage for an NFL player. So he looks at the game differently because the clock is running out for him. He's trying to win a championship before he retires. Kyler Murray thinks he has all the time in the world. And he's partially right, but you never know because football can be over like that. So I think that's what we're seeing.
What's your thoughts there, Mr. Scott?
Well, I think Kyler Murray is too little. I mean, when I see him out there playing, he looks like a child. I mean, I just think he's too little. I mean, he's quick. He seems to have a good arm. To be a quarterback, oh man, I think, boy, he's going to have a tough time seeing over those linemen. He's going to have a tough. And their team doesn't, since Larry retired. I think Larry brought a lot of veteran kind of leadership to that team. And so right now, adjusting to the new quarterback and I think this year, to me, is kind of a wash. I mean, I don't see them really doing anything this year. And, I guess they'll have to wait for the draft and see what they can do with their pieces. I think Kyler's too little. I mean, when I watch him out there, he just looks so tiny. I mean, it's like.
Mr. Scott, you do know that I just got a tweet from Drew Brees talking about what the hell do you mean too little?
He's smaller than Drew Brees. Drew Brees didn't look that diminutive to me. Now maybe that's just I haven't seen them both. I don't know.
Drew was taller. Drew was taller, but he's actually heavier than Drew Brees, believe it or not.
And what's that other little guy? Bill.
Well, I can tell you,
he played some time in the CFL before he came.
Well, I was going to give you. Here's the list of quarterbacks.
Doug Flutie, Eddie LeBaron. Yeah, Eddie LeBaron, Doug Flutie. But yeah, those guys.
He and Russell Wilson are almost exactly the same height as well. So he's
I forgot about Russ.
5'10", and
that's questionable. That's questionable.
Well, it's not questionable. He's been measured. I'm not talking about his program height.
You're talking about Kyler is 5'10".
What he was measured at the combine. So he was measured at the combine at 5'10" and 3/8.
Kyler.
Yes, and 207 pounds. I don't know if he weighs that now. I think he may have bulked up for the combine. I think he's probably a little lighter now, but he actually weighs more than Drew Brees.
Guys, Mr. Scott, I'm going to start with you first. Here's the NFL.com's top 10 power rankings. You tell me if you agree or disagree. Number 1 is the Eagles. Number 2 is the Chiefs. Number 3 is the 49ers. Number 4 is the Cowboys. Number 5 is the Bills. Number 6 would be the Dolphins. Number 7 would be the Vikings. Number 8 would be the Bungles. Number 9 would be the Titans. And number 10, the Jets. Do you agree with this list, Mr. Scott, or do you have people that you would take out and some you'd put in?
Well, the best 3 teams are the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Cowboys. Those 3 are the best teams. I mean, all the other teams. I mean, it's funny that they rate San Francisco that high with Garoppolo being so. Everybody has such disdain for Garoppolo, but I mean, I think that they're up. They're probably my 4th team. But yeah, Cowboys, Bills. I don't think Philly. I think this is just going to be a mad scramble. Kansas City is the best team, and I think Buffalo, if the quarterback gets healthy, they're going to be tough. And the NFC, it is up. Well, the Vikings have a chance because of their record. They're just going to have to get through the playoffs, and we'll have to see how that. But Dallas, I put them ahead of the Vikings. I put Dallas ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the Vikings are rated 7th.
Yeah, that's about right, I think.
Bill, what's your thoughts on this top 10?
Yeah, I'm going to mostly I agree with some of what was said. I don't understand the disdain for Philadelphia. When Philadelphia, first of all, has one very controversial loss, but they have won most of their games with a few exceptions. I mean, maybe not blowouts exactly, but it's not like they were like squeaker, last minute field goals. Mostly they're winning these games, getting up fairly early, and then, I think maybe not cruising, but they're able to take control of the game and, run the ball and sort of squeeze the other team to death like a boa constrictor. They're similar to the Tennessee Titans to some extent in the way they're built, except I think Jalen Hurts has more upside than a guy like Tannehill. So the same way that the Titans and people somehow sort of poo-poo them, but they find themselves playing for the AFC title 2 out of the last 3 years, they're doing something right. And Philadelphia's built very much the same way, only slightly better, because Jalen Hurts is able to make plays that Steven Tannehill isn't able to make. So I'm not quite sure what he doesn't see or doesn't like about Philadelphia. They have maybe the best secondary right now in the NFL. So losing Chauncey Gardner-Johnson may bring them down from being number 1 clearly to maybe in the top 5 as opposed to being number 1. But they were clearly number 1 when Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was healthy. They have a pass rush that gets home, both interior and from the exterior. I mean, Hassan Reddick has helped an already dangerous pass rush to be one of the best in the NFL. And he's just really a situational guy, but he's incredibly dynamic and tough to stop. Their running game is one of the best in the NFL. And with the emergence of Jalen Hurts as a downfield passer with the Slim Reaper, Devontae Smith, and Arthur Brown, a.k.a. A.J. Brown.
Bill, I asked you about 10 teams, not just one.
I mean, I disagree with some of it. I think some of those teams are too high. I agree, like I said, Mr. Scott, the 49ers are maybe a little too high for my taste. I think Philadelphia is one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the NFL. I've watched every single one of their games, and they don't have any real big weaknesses. Their offensive line is one of the best. They have a tremendous defensive line. They have.
What do you guys think about the Jets being at number 10?
I have no problem with it, especially now they have Mike White back there. I think that's probably about right.
I have to wait and see how they do Sunday against the Vikings. That's a very, very interesting game. That is a very interesting game. There could be a letdown with the Vikings. The Jets have been coming on, actually. So on my board, I think I took the Jets on that, and I've been hot on my board. I've been just killing them. I don't even want to answer the phone when I call them now. It rings and rings. So I got them on the run. So
we're going to get to your board here right after I ask you this last question here. And I'm going to start with you, Mr. Scott. Deshaun Watson, as you mentioned, is going to make his debut against his old team, the Texans, Sunday. What would you consider to be a successful QBR against his old team, Mr. Scott?
Well, Houston's terrible. I mean, they're terrible. And so if he doesn't beat them, it just shows that the stress and strain of all this stuff going on has got to him. And we'll see. I mean, he hasn't played. I mean, so this, it's off my board. It's definitely off. I mean, I wouldn't touch it. But I mean, for some reason, I still think Cleveland's a good team. I don't know why, but I can't. I don't have my information in front of me. Their record. I mean, I'm sure they're below 500.
They're 4-7.
4-7.
Yeah, but for some reason, I still think they're a good team, and it should be interesting. I guess some of the legislators are supposed to be protesting, protesting at the game, and I don't know what they claim to gain by that, but
The only reason why the Clowns are a good team is because we have a worse team in Pittsburgh. But that's another situation for another day. Bill, what do you think about what do you think would be a successful QBR against the Texans?
In his first came back 61.6, and that was,
you want to get a little more precise?
yes. So just so you know, that would put him a couple of points behind Dak Prescott, but it would put him 0.2 of a point above the person he's replacing, Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby was at 61.4. And then the top two, of course, are Tua Tagovailoa, who is at, I think, 83.6, and 77.7 is Patrick Mahomes II. So that's the high cotton. I don't think he should be there yet. One, because that's not the kind of offense. They really are a run the ball offense. They want to hit you on play action, but they want to establish the run. They have two dynamic, incredibly talented running backs. Nick Chubb is one of my favorite running backs in football. And then when he comes out, Kareem Hunt is, maybe not quite as dynamic, but it's really, really good.
Yeah.
They have a dangerous running combination. With the emergence of David Njoku, they now have someone to work the middle of the field, and then outside they have Amari Cooper. So they have enough talent at every level of the offense on the skill positions to be able to threaten you deep middle and, of course, in the running game. And so the real challenge for them is, one, avoiding turnovers, and two, can their defense hold up? They have a very good pass rush. Their secondary has been very much underwhelming, I think would be a nice way to put it. They can be thrown on early and often.
Let's see, 1:53 left. Scores 24-10. Buffalo. Mr. Scott, down for these predictions now. We're going to see how good you are. Let's see. The spot tonight was 5.5 for the Bills, given the Pats, so we won't worry about that. So, Mr. Scott, the Steelers getting 1.5 at the Falcons.
Steelers, I think I'll take them. I mean, there's just something about the uniforms. Atlanta hasn't done anything much, although they have, my main guy, Cordarrelle Patterson. I mean, he's been very dangerous. But I mean, I think the Steelers are better. I mean, I think that's I would take them. I think that's a good one. Let's go out there. I'm gonna put them on my board.
Oh, okay, so you got a little use for the man with the black hat this week. Okay, that's all right. All right, that's usually how they play us, But let's see, the Packers getting -2.5 at the Bears. Mr. Scott.
It's really off the board, but I'll take the Packers.
Bill, the Steelers 1.5 at the Falcons.
Yeah, I think the Steelers will win that game by 4 points, so they'll cover the 1.5. And it's mainly because they have their defense is so much better than the Falcons' defense.
The Packers getting 2.5, giving 2.5 to the Bears.
And I think that the number ends up being 3, so it'll be a barely narrow cover, but they'll cover it late.
The Jaguars beating the Lions by 1.5, Bill, at the Lions.
These lines are very good. These are good lines. But I think the Jaguars do pull that one out also late. I think it's once again about a 3-point game. So I'd say they'll cover it.
The Jets getting 1.5 at the Vikings, Bill.
Really? Okay, 1.5. I thought it'd be a bigger
No,
line.
3.5.
Oh, 3.5. There we go. Okay, that sounds like more of what it'd be. Yeah. So I think that the Vikings win, but I don't think they cover 3. You see, the Vikings are giving 3.5 to the Jets, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think the Vikings win, but I don't think they cover 3.5. I think it's being a real nail biter, and I think that the Vikings win is by less than 3.5.
Mr. Scott, the Jags at the Lions getting 1.5.
Boy, I don't really know how good the Jags are. I mean, they have been good, but then the Lions are at home, and so far what I've seen, I guess I would go with the Lions. If I had to go, yeah, I'd go with the Lions.
The Jets getting 3.5 at the Vikings, Mr. Scott.
Yeah, I'll take the 3.5. I'll take the 3.5 with the Jets. Yeah.
Okay. The Commanders getting 1.5 from the Giants, playing the Giants, Mr. Scott.
Well, this is another one. I don't know if the Commanders are any good. I mean, can they actually win on the road? Can they? I take the Giants at home.
Let's see. The Titans getting 5.5 at the Eagles, Mr. Scott.
The Titans messed up one of my boards last week. I mean, they really. I don't know why I don't believe in the Eagles. I don't know why. I just don't know why. Getting 5.5. I take the Titans. That's for the 5.5 points. I would take it.
Okay. Bill, the Commanders getting 1.5 at the Giants.
I had to smile when my friend asked if they could win on the road. They have a better road record than home record, sir. Mr. Scott, they're 4-2 on the road. So the answer is yes. They win more on the road than they do at home, in fact. They are only 500 at home, so they're a better road team than they are a home team, in answer to your question. And I know you don't like facts to enter in the equation, Mr. Scott, but unfortunately, they rear their ugly head occasionally. 1.5. God, that's just about right, too. God, they're good this week. Sometimes the lines are quite juicy. The ones they are not. They've tightened up. Oh, man, this is a tough one. Despite the fact that I do think that they're a better road team than they are a home team, I think the Giants find a way to win this one late. So it'll be close, but I think they'll cover the
Hey, what about the Titans getting a 5.5 at the Eagles?
No. I mean, 5.5. It's funny, after all these very tight lines to go that hot. The Eagles do win this game, but I don't think they're going to cover. They have to cover 5.5. That's a lot to me. So no, I don't think they're going to cover 5.5.
Did Bill weigh on the Jets and the Vikings?
The what?
Did Bill weigh on the Jets and the Vikings? I didn't hear his.
I believe I did, but
yeah, he go ahead. He talked.
Yeah,
about
I had the Vikings, but not covering. Yeah, the number was close, but just a little too much for me. I think it was 3.5, right?
Yeah. He took the 3.5.
Well, it's the hook that got me, right. If it was 3, I might have gone for it, but I don't think they can cover 3.5. I think it's
these half points is killing me. I mean, this whole half point, every game got this old hook on it.
I noticed that. Yeah, everybody's throwing the hook out this year.
No, all year. It's never. I don't think we. In fact, we even had one game where the hook. It was just the hook. The
right.
0.5.
Yeah. You can't even get a push. I mean,
yeah. The like I said, the push days are over. They don't even sell wagons anymore. I don't think. I don't know. But let's see. Where did we stop here? Okay, Bill. We stopped at the Titans and the Eagles. Did you take the 5.5, Bill?
No, I said that's too much.
Okay.
I was like, if it had been 4, I would have taken the Eagles, but 5.5. That was 1.5 points too many for me to swallow. So I'm taking the Titans.
Okay. Bill, sticking with you. The Broncos getting 8.5 at the Ratbirds.
Man, they're killing me.
Get your analytics. Get your analytics, Bill. Get your computer out. Get your analytics computer.
Here's what I will tell you. I will tell you that after a loss, and the Ravens are coming off a loss, they're 10-4 against the spread in the last 14 games. So I have a feeling they do cover, but it's going to be a scary backdoor cover, probably off of something like a pick 6, late in the game after making someone's heart nearly explode by, messing around with this inferior team. But they'll eventually pull away right at the very end. So as much as I hate the number, I'm going to say that the Ravens do cover. But, God, I hate how close they're going to make it.
Okay. The final score, Bills 24, Patriots 10. Bill, staying with you. The Browns giving 7.5 to the Texans, and the Texans are at home.
Once again, I hate doing this, but I'm actually, you know what? I am going to take the Texans. I think they're going to lose by a touchdown, and it's a 7.5. So I'm going to say that the Texans eke out a very near non-cover, but they lose, they lose by 7.
Mr. Scott, the Broncos getting 8.5 from the Ratbirds.
Damn. What's wrong with what happened to Russell Wilson? I mean, he's no good. He's no good anymore. He got big money. Is he even going to play? I thought he might be hurt or something.
Well, he's been hurt. Yeah, he's been playing through injury, but I think he'll suit up.
So far, he's scheduled to start. So far, this is Thursday. So
yeah, I'll take. I'll take the Birds. Yeah.
Okay,
and the Clown won't be on my board. I'm just taking it for this. That's not going to be on my board. I wouldn't fool with that. That's ridiculous.
And the Clowns giving 7.5 to the Texans. Deshaun making his debut.
Yeah, I think they'll come. Texans are terrible. Lovey, that whole Lovey thing is just a disaster. So,
well, he wasn't a disaster last year, so maybe it's not him.
Yeah, well, neither was what's his name, Matt Stafford. But
and he's playing hurt.
Let's see. Where did we stop here? Oh, Mr. Scott, the Seahawks giving the Rams 4.5, and the Rams are at home.
Because the Rams have just burned me. I won't touch them. They are, because I really think the quarterback is just a Dilfer. He's one of those guys got his Super Bowl, and boy, giving up points though at the Rams. I'll take the points actually. I don't like the Rams, but I'd take the points. I think it's too many.
Oh, okay. The Dolphins getting 3.5 at the 49ers.
I kind of like the Dolphins. I like both of these teams. I do. I like both of these teams. That one is really, I guess that the hook, boy. 49ers. I'll take them. I'll take them at home.
Okay. Bill, the Seahawks minus 4.5 at the Rams.
The Seahawks minus 4.5. The Seahawks are exactly right, and they're exactly 500 against the spread this year. So that makes it interesting with them. They're a 500 team against the spread. The spread was how much again?
4.5.
Man, if it were 3, it was easy. If 4, I could still do it. 4.5. And they're playing at
the Rams.
Okay, I'm still going to take the Seahawks, but I don't like it.
What about the Fins getting 3.5 at the 49ers?
Well, Miami is a good football team, but they're terrible against the spread. They are 0 against the spread this year. They have not won a game against the spread this year. So I don't think that suddenly starts now. I don't think they get their first win against the spread this week. So I'm going to take the 49ers.
Bill, the Chiefs giving the Bengals 3.5, and they're playing in Cincinnati.
Well, this will be an interesting game for a bunch of reasons. Because the Chiefs are great against the spread. And
but they're lousy against the Bengals.
Right, recently, yes, they're right. Recently, they've struggled against the Bengals. What have the Bengals been like against the spread this year? That's a great question. I know how the Chiefs have been against the spread. The Bengals this year have been also good against the spread. So the Bengals are 8-3 against the spread. This is gonna be good. And the number is what again?
3.5.
Woof. I think the Chiefs win it, but I don't think they cover 3.5. So I'll take the Bengals.
The Chargers, Bill, giving the Raiders 2.5, and they're playing in Las Vegas.
I'm going to take the Chargers. The Chargers are actually very good against the spread. They're 7-4 this year against the spread, so I'll take the Chargers.
Mr. Scott, let's see. Where do we start off? The Chiefs, giving the Bengals 3.5 at home.
Yeah, I think Cincinnati messed me up last week too. But I'm gonna take the Chiefs. I'm gonna keep rolling with the Chiefs.
The Chargers, giving the Raiders 2.5.
Gosh, the Raiders just man. I think it's gonna be over. I already got that down as over. I got it marked. The winner, I guess the Raiders. They need to get a win.
Okay. The Broncos getting 9.5 against the Cowboys, Mr. Scott.
Wait a minute, the Broncos, Denver?
Yes, sir.
Well, I thought you had Broncos against the Red.
No.
Who?
No. Wait a minute. Hold.
Yeah, hold on. You did. Have
yeah, wait a minute. Who are the Cowboys playing this week? The Cowboys are playing. Who are the Cowboys playing this week?
Man, 9.5 against who?
Let me go back in my pigskin, pick them here, and find them. NFL.
Well, Dallas' next game is their game against the what do you call it? They're playing the Colts. They played the Colts in the Sunday night game.
Yeah,
Colts.
that is it. I knew I had somebody down here. Yeah, the Colts.
Sunday night game.
The Colts giving getting 9.5.
God, I don't give up them kind of points. That's just, I don't like Indianapolis, but it seems like their running back is getting going. So 9.5, I'd take the 9.5.
Okay, well, the Saints getting 6.5, playing Tom Brady, Mr. Scott.
See, these old hooks, these crooks, these people are ridiculous, man. I'll take the Bucks.
Okay. Bill, where did we leave off with you? On the Fins and the 49ers or the Chiefs?
Yeah, I'd answered about the Chiefs, and I answered about the Fins and the 49ers. So whatever.
Okay, so that means you answered the Chargers also. So the Colts get 9.5 from the Cowboys.
That's a big, scary number, but I'm going to, as I would never do in real life, like this is not a game I would actually wager on. But since I am not wagering on this game, I will. Like I said, that number would just be like, nope, thank you, on to the next. But for the purposes of your show, James, I will take the Cowboys. I think they get a turnover. They get a lot of turnovers. I think they're either number 1 or number 2 in generating turnovers this season, and I think they generate enough turnovers to cover for the purposes of your show.
Okay. Monday night, Bill. The Saints against the Bucks. Saints getting 6.5. Bucks playing at home.
I think the Saints cover, at least in part because of the decimating injuries to the Tampa Bay defensive backfield. They're missing a lot of their best players in their secondary. And I think that they're going to get some big plays. Big, like 50, 60, 40-yard completions to people like Olave down the field. And that's how the Saints, keep it close enough that they're not going to be able to cover that number.
Okay. Final thoughts, Bill.
So there's been a lot that has happened since last we were together. I hope everyone had a fantastic holiday. I hope that you got to spend time with your families and, of course, eat until parts of your body, felt like they were about to fly apart. But I was put in mind recently of the life and contributions to our world of Shirley Chisholm, who started her run for president, not on this day, but a couple of days hence in the future. 50 years ago? But I think it might have been 50. And looking back on it now, I think, though people did treat it as a historical event, as something that was important, I don't think it got its full shrift. Like, people truly saw just how big a moment it was in the history of our planet. And not just the United States. Obviously, the United States was the most affected. But in 1968, when she was elected to the United States Congress, she was the first Black woman to be elected to Congress. And beyond what she represented is just symbolically, because she was important as a symbol. Surely Anita Chisholm was more than just a symbol. She did real things. And when in 1972, she became the first Black candidate to have a major party nomination for president and to run, she not only pushed the bar up for women as a whole and obviously for Black women, she also began to sort of push aside and reveal what people now call sort of intersectionality, right? The places where things like classism and racism and sexism all meet. And she was a person that started her life as a teacher, right? She was a terrific student. She was a person who worked her way all the way up, had been, in local politics, and an assembly person, right? She was born in New York, but spent 4 years of her life in Barbados, then came back to the United States. She did so many different things and, came from, once again, very sort of humble beginnings. Her mother was a seamstress. Her father was a baker's helper. She worked much of her life, even when she was very, very young. Her grandmother was very involved in her life as well and helped her to, not crumble, in essence, when things came her way. She went to girls' high school, which, for those of you who are familiar with Brooklyn, was the high school for girls, right? You have boys. Now it's called Boys and Girls. We used to have boys' high school and girls' high school before they were merged into a integrated unit. But she did very well. She was vice president of her class. She could have had her pick of schools, but couldn't afford to go to some of the schools where she was accepted. Ends up going to Brooklyn College, where she had no tuition charge and then lived at home. So she really went for almost free, which is, on another show, I'll have a rant about what's going on with the cost of college education. But she moves on from there, graduates at near the top of her class, cum laude, joins Delta Sigma Theta, the Harriet Tubman Society, advocates for inclusion and integration, gets involved in the civil rights movement, gets involved in, her father is one of the people who supported Marcus Garvey in the UNIA. and she slowly but surely gets more and more involved in child care issues and early education issues, and eventually, like I said, enters politics in the 1950s, and helps the first black judge in Brooklyn, a man named Lewis Flagg Jr., and gets hooked into it, and joins the League of Women Voters and climbs up and up. Eventually becomes an assembly person, then eventually a congressperson, like to run for president. But at no point did she lose. We talk about people sort of losing their contact with their constituents. That never happened with Shirley Chisholm. She always was involved in the interest and the lives and the problems and the passions of her constituents. She took seriously, like some people, have quote unquote office hours where you can come in and, tell them your problems. And many of them, you could tell they're just sort of counting the minutes so they can get the hell out of there and go back to DC. Never with Shirley Chisholm. She took very seriously her commitment to all of her constituents. She would meet them sometimes at their jobs, would meet them at their homes at times to ask them about what was going on. We don't see, sadly, people with that kind of commitment very often. And like I said, she's not, in my mind, discussed nearly enough as one of the great American heroes in the history of our nation. So my final thoughts are with the life, the career, and the legacy of Shirley Anita Chisholm.
Mr. Scott, do you think Jerry Jones was curious enough to attend one of her rallies?
Well, I doubt it. I seriously doubt that. But I do think, what Bill says with Shirley Chisholm, I mean, she was more than qualified to actually be president. And when I think of her, I think of a female Frederick Douglass. I think of someone that had the strength, the courage, the wherewithal, the acumen to do whatever needed to be done to fix this thing. So, and it's in such a contrast. And I wanted to ask, my final thought, I guess, is for the two of you. There's another woman that's come out about the great candidate in Georgia by the name of Herschel Walker. And there's more. And the violent episode said also now he's apparently he has made some statements about he was sitting at his home in Texas while he's running for an office in the state of Georgia. Mm-hmm. And so when you talk about Shirley Chisholm and you see a buffoon, Pootie Tang, in poor man's Pootie Tang running for office, it really, I mean, I hope that's not an indicator.
Now I'm getting calls. Now I'm getting calls from a bunch of poor men. You lumping them in with the infamous Herschel Walker. Poor men don't even want
to. And also you're getting calls from self-wielding vigilantes who would not like to be associated with Herschel Walker. Sign my pity on the winning kind. What a day, my Damie. What a day.
I actually had to pull out a copy of the movie. I mean, yeah, but on the serious side of that, I mean, this is really a sad, sorry type of a thing. I mean, with all the things we need in this country and what the significance of that is, even though they don't really need him as far as what they're doing with the Senate, and even his main man, 45, wouldn't even come down and support him. He wouldn't come down and campaign for him, and Herschel said, well, he supports me all the time. Just jibber jabber. And so it's, I mean, we look at where we've come, where we are. And I went to a meeting. I'm on a committee about this George Floyd, and I wanted to just quickly run this by you two. They want to build a commemoration called George Perry Floyd Square. Now, I didn't even know he had a middle name, to tell you the truth. He's not from here. I mean, they got this big, and then they want to have like his body laying out. I mean, something that looks like that laying in the middle of the street, and putting that. And I just, I happened to be in St. Louis when the Michael Brown thing happened. I happened to be there. And I went to the protests, and I just called my friend. She hasn't called me back yet in St. Louis to see what are they doing in Ferguson now after that event? What is Ferguson? Because here in Minneapolis, they don't know what to do. They have that place sits there. It's drug infested. It is, people are there. The police don't even go there anymore. I mean, the neighbors, the residents in that area are unsafe. They have people that have just taken over the area. And so now they're saying they're going to build a George memorial to George Floyd. And to me, this is like, if we need to build memorials to people that have done things for this community. If we're going to do that, I just, I don't, just briefly, what, if anybody wants to chime in on it now, or we can talk about it some other time.
Well, we definitely want to talk about it on Monday, but the thing that kind of, I'm not sure what it means, because a man is not from there. Does that make the injustice that was done to him any less?
No, just like it doesn't make the injustice that's been done to hundreds of other us, thousands of us through the years. No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Then how come you didn't change it over the last 100
Well, that's not me. I mean, how come we haven't? That's a good question. That is a very good question.
Well, I'm still trying to vote for Councilman Scott here. So I'm trying to be an institution for change. So I don't, people like you and Miss Sims that are involved within the community should be the ones taking charge.
I know.
You are the face of an organization. You have a best-selling book. You're well known within the community. You've been in that community and under many titles and many different circumstances. You are the type of people that should be running for change.
Well, like I say, I go to the meetings, I attend all these things, and it's frustrating because you go to these meetings. It's the whole thing about sticky papers, write things on the wall, but this happened 2 years ago, and we're no further than we were then. And they don't know, they want to honor. During the time of the trial, this police woman shot Dante Wright, saying it was her taser.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. And so these things have been happening constantly, and I think focusing on that, I don't want to focus on that. I want us to say we've moved past that. That we as a city, as an area, we have moved past. We've gotten rid of. See, you have to fix the conditions. You have to get rid of the police. That Chauvin guy had 17 to 20 complaints against him, and he's supervising people that just started the job.
Yep.
And so those are the things that have to be fixed. See, it's not just memorializing an event in my mind. So these are the things that I'm pushing for in the city, and we'll see what happens.
But once again, Mr. Scott, you can't keep electing the same people. You have to put new people in front.
I agree.
Yeah, and you need people that are known and have a reputation, a certain reputation with the community, and that's why I think that you'd be a great candidate.
Credibility, and I've been approached. We'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. So I'm active. I'm an activist. At this point, I'm an activist.
Hey,
I'm an activist, and I can pick them too. So I mean.
I can't wait to see who your Somali running mate is going to be. Have a good night, everyone. We'll talk to you next week.
We'll see you again in a week.
You around this Monday, Bill?
Possibly
or next week or next
possibly,